Let me tell you something, your brain is a powerhouse, but most people never tap into its full potential because they approach learning the wrong way. They sit down, exhausted, distracted, in a passive state, and then wonder why nothing sticks. It's not that you're not smart enough. It's not that the material is too hard. It's that your state is working against you instead of for you. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to learn something when you're excited? When you're fully engaged, when your energy is high, when you're physically and mentally locked in? That's not a coincidence. That's how your brain is designed to work. Your body and mind are connected. If your body is sluggish, your mind is sluggish. If your body is energized, your brain is primed for learning. So before you even think about sitting down to learn, you need to get yourself into a peak state. How? Move, shake out the tension, stand up, jump around, breathe deeply, clap your hands. Do something that forces your body to wake up, because when you change your physiology, you change your focus. And focus is the key to rapid learning. Now, you might be thinking, that sounds too simple. But let me ask you this, have you ever been in a class, a meeting, or even reading a book where your eyes were moving across the page, but nothing was sinking in? That's because you were in a passive low energy state. Your brain was running at a low level and information was bouncing right off you instead of sticking. But when you train yourself to snap into a peak state before learning, everything changes. Your brain becomes a sponge. You process information faster, you retain more, and most importantly, you stay engaged. And when you're fully engaged, learning isn't a chore, it becomes effortless. So don't just sit there and hope information sticks. Command your mind, command your body, and create the energy that fuels rapid learning. Because the truth is, learning isn't just about what you study, it's about how you show up. And the way you show up will determine how fast you grow. Now, the only question is, are you ready to take control? Most people try to learn by reading a book, watching a video, or listening to a lecture, but here's the problem, passive learning doesn't work. You don't learn by just consuming information. You learn by doing. You learn by putting yourself in the game, by engaging with the material, by making mistakes and adjusting in real time. Think about how you learned to speak your first language. You didn't memorize grammar rules and vocabulary lists before saying your first words. You immersed yourself in it. You heard it, you tried to speak it, you messed up, and then you got better. That's how the brain learns best, through experience, not theory. The same applies to everything else. You want to learn sales? Get on the phone and start talking to people. You want to learn a new skill? Get your hands dirty and practice it in real situations, because when you're immersed in something, your brain creates real connections. It doesn't just store facts. It wires them into your nervous system so they become second nature. And let me tell you something, immersion forces you to learn faster than any other method. Why? Because when you're in the game, there's no time for overthinking. You're adapting, problem solving, figuring things out on the fly. That's how you build real skill. That's how it's something 10 times faster than the average person. But most people hesitate. They think I need to learn more before I start. No. The way you learn is by starting. You don't need to be ready. You just need to dive in. Because the moment you take action, your brain shifts from passive learning to active engagement. And that's where real growth happens. So if you want to accelerate your learning, stop waiting for the perfect moment, stop hiding behind books and videos, and start immersing yourself in the process. Put yourself in situations where you have no choice but to learn. Push yourself into the deep end, because the fastest way to master anything is to live it, breathe it, make it a part of who you are. Now, the only question is, what are you ready to dive into? If you really want to lock in what you've locked, even one simple but powerful strategy that will take your retention to the next level, teach it. Most people think learning happens when they read, listen, or take notes, but the truth is you don't fully understand something until you can explain it to someone else. Think about it. How many times have you read something, thought you understood it, but then struggled to recall it later? That's because passive learning doesn't force your brain to organize the information in a way that sticks. But the moment you try to teach it, everything changes. Your brain has to make connections, simplify concepts, and structure the knowledge in a way that makes sense. That process locks it into your memory like nothing else. This is why the best learners are the best teachers. If you've ever noticed, when you explain something to someone else, you suddenly realize what you actually know and where the gaps are. And when you fill those gaps, your understanding goes deeper than ever before. That's why teaching is one of the most powerful learning hacks on the planet. And guess what? You don't have to be an expert to do this. You just have to be one step ahead of the person you're teaching. Find a friend, a coworker, a family member, anyone who will listen and share what you've just learned. If no one's around, teach it out loud to yourself. Write it down in your own words. Make a video about it. Post it online. Whatever it takes to get it out of your head and into the real world. Because when you teach, you're not just repeating information, you're reinforcing it. You're building confidence in your knowledge. And most importantly, you're making it impossible to forget. So don't just learn for yourself. Share it. Explain it. Teach it. Because when you do, you don't just retain information, you own it. Now, the only question is, who are you going to teach first? Most people think learning happens in their head, that if they just absorb enough information, they'll eventually get it. But let me tell you something, knowledge without action is useless. You don't truly learn by reading, listening, or watching. You learn by doing. You learn by stepping into the arena, taking risks, making mistakes, and adjusting in real time. Because until you take action, everything you've learned is just a theory. Think about when you first learned to drive. You didn't become a confident driver by reading the manual or watching someone else do it. You had to get behind the wheel. You had to feel the pressure, make quick decisions, and adapt on the spot. And at first, you probably weren't great. Maybe you hesitated at stop signs, misjudged turns, or hit the brakes too hard. But over time, with repetition and action, it became second nature. That's how real learning happens. The same rule applies to everything else. You can read 100 books on business, but until you start a business, you don't really know how it works. You can watch every tutorial on playing guitar, but until you put your fingers on the strings and feel the resistance, you haven't actually learned. Action is what takes you from knowing to owning a skill. But here's the problem: most people hesitate. They wait until they feel ready. Let me tell you something, you'll never feel ready. Your brain will always look for reasons to delay, to avoid failure, to stay comfortable. That's why the most successful learners don't wait, they jump in before they're ready. They take the leap, figure it out as they go, and course correct along the way. And guess what? The moment you take action, your brain shifts. You start making real connections. You see what works and what doesn't. And most importantly, you start getting results. Because results don't come from what you know. They come from what you do with what you know. So don't just sit there thinking about learning. Take the first step, make a move, and trust that action will teach you more than anything else ever could. Now, the only question is, what are you going to act on today? You don't become great at anything by doing it once. You don't master a skill by trying it a few times and then moving on to something else. Real mastery comes from one thing, repetition, because the brain doesn't just learn through exposure, it learns through reinforcement. The more you repeat something, the deeper it gets wired into your nervous system until it becomes second nature. Think about the first time you learned to walk. Did you stand up and start sprinting across the room? No, you fell over and over again. But every time you got back up, your brain made tiny adjustments. It learned what worked, what didn't, and eventually walking became effortless. You didn't have to think about it anymore, it became automatic. That's what happens when you repeat something enough times. It stops being something you try to do and it becomes who you are. Now let's apply this to learning anything. Whether it's a new language, a business skill, or even a new mindset, you can't just dip your toes in and expect results. You need to immerse yourself and do it over and over again. The first time will feel awkward. The second time, slightly better. But by the 100th time, you'll wonder why it ever seemed difficult in the first place. That's the power of repetition. It transforms the impossible into instinct. But here's where most people fail. They try something, it feels uncomfortable, and they quit. They tell themselves, I guess I'm just not good at this. No, you're not bad at it. You're just not trained yet. The difference between the masters and everyone else is simple. They kept going when others stopped. They embraced repetition, even when it was boring, even when it was frustrating, because they knew that every rep was making them better. So whatever it is you want to learn, commit to it. Not once, not twice, but until it becomes automatic. Because success isn't about doing something once and hoping it sticks. It's about showing up every single day and reinforcing it until it's part of who you are. Now, the only question is, what are you willing to repeat until you master it? Let me tell you something, learning isn't just about the information you take in. It's about the emotion attached to it. You don't remember facts, you remember feelings. You remember experiences that had an impact on you. That's why most people struggle to retain information, because they try to learn in a flat, emotionless state. But when you inject emotion into the process, when you create excitement, urgency, or even a little bit of fear, your brain locks in that learning at a much deeper level. Think back to a moment in your life when you learned something that stuck with you forever. Maybe it was a lesson from a mentor, a powerful story, or even a mistake that cost you big time. Why do you still remember it? Because it had emotion attached to it. Your brain knew it was important, so it wired it in permanently. That's how real learning happens, not by casually absorbing information, but by engaging with it in a way that moves you. So if you want to learn faster and retain information at a deeper level, you need to create emotion in your learning process. How do you do that? You bring energy to it. You make it exciting. You connect it to something meaningful. If you're learning a new skill, tie it to a powerful reason why, something that fires you up. If you're reading a book, don't just skim the words, imagine how applying that knowledge will change your life. If you're studying something complex, turn it into a challenge, a game, something that excites your competitive side. And here's another secret emotion. Doesn't just come from excitement, it comes from urgency. If you treat learning like something you can do whenever, your brain won't prioritize it. But if you create urgency, if you act like your future depends on it, your brain kicks into a different gear. You focus harder, you retain more, because suddenly it matters. That's how you learn at an elite level. Not by passively collecting information, but by fully engaging with it, attaching emotion to it, and making it part of your identity. When you do that, learning stops feeling like a chore. It becomes something you can't wait to do. Now, the only question is, how will you bring emotion into your learning starting today? At the end of the day, learning isn't just about what you know, it's about what you do with what you know. It's about the energy you bring, the action you take, the repetition you commit to, and the emotion you attach to the process. The people who grow the fastest, the ones who master skills at an unbelievable pace, aren't the ones who sit back and absorb information. They're the ones who dive in, immerse themselves, teach what they learn, and apply it with intensity. And now it's your turn. You have everything you need to learn faster than ever before. You know how to get into a peak state. You know that immersion beats passive learning. You know that teaching reinforces mastery. You understand that action is the key to real growth. You see that repetition wires your brain, and most importantly, you realize that emotion fuels retention. So don't just leave here inspired, leave here with a decision. A decision to apply these principles. A decision to show up differently, to train your mind like a warrior, and to take control of your growth like never before. Because when you commit to learning at this level, there's nothing you can't achieve. Go out there, take action, and make it happen. Good luck and thank you.